welcome back to another part of Design Your Own Level tutorial. In this video what we'll be doing is we will be creating our window areas. So if we jump over to our reference video, you can see that this is basically just a cutout of the wall. It has its own frame, it's got some blinds, but they are static meshes so they never move, and then it's got like these borders on the sides. There's also the curtains, and the curtains seem to be somehow attached by some kind of a latch at the top. But these curtains never move in the game itself. They are static meshes, except for this one that blows around in the wind a little bit. But for now, we're just going to ignore the curtains and we're just going to focus on this window area over here. So let's just jump over to Unreal. And a thing that I just want to mention before we get started is when we blocked out our level, I used the basic shapes over here on the left. And I dragged in a cube. Now, essentially what this is a static mesh. This was created in an external 3D program, imported into Unreal, and then used as their basic shapes over here. What I want to actually use is geometry, so that I can use like the box brushes or any of the other shapes over here. They are a little bit more, I don't know if they cost a little bit more when you're talking about performance wise. I do know that it adds a little bit of time when you have to build geometry on your levels, but for this particular instance, I think it will be better for us to use the geometry brushes. So what we're essentially going to do is we're going to, let's just delete that one, and I'm going to delete this first one over here. Please note that I did make two copies of it, so the top and the bottom one are identical in scale and size, so I'm going to use that as my reference one. Then I'm just going to go over to geometries. I'm going to drag in a box. Now, before we get completely started, I can actually just kind of like try and center this. I think it's going to be centered over there. I don't think it's going to matter. Let's just leave it as is. When you're going to resize this brush, you're not going to use the transform scalings over here, because if you're going to use this, if we take the first one up here, this was 6 meters, and you can see this is like halfway to the roof basically, or well, from the roof halfway down. And if we set this to 6 meters and we drag it up, you can see that essentially this thing is double the size. The reason for that is that the scaling settings should be set in the brush shape over here, or the size over here. Well, you can actually set all of this to like 100 to make it the bases, and then use this scaling over here if you want to keep it a bit more uniform. But just note that if you are scaling and you notice that things look like way off from your estimates, then this is the reason over here. Okay, so now that I've set this to 100, the scales that I was looking for was 19, 0.5, and 6. So we can set this to 19, 0.5, and 6. And then we're going to get a wall that's the same size. I'm just going to position it where it's supposed to be. I think just 1 unit. That way. Went one too far. There we go. And I think it's perfectly lined up over here. And there we go. So now we've replaced our cube static mesh with the box brush over here. So I'm just going to delete this one. And then select the bottom one, hold Alt. And then just like drag it up and stack it on top of one another. And then we've replaced our wall with the BSB brushes, or the box brush. Okay, so that's that part done. Now we want to add our window. So if we go over to our reference again, you'll see that there's like those little cupboard table thingies that we created. And then the window kind of like starts after that, and it's about 2 meters tall. Starts a little bit after that. That's maybe like slightly taller, but we're going to use this size. So if we jump over here, this one was 1 meter tall. So essentially we want to create a hole on this side over here that starts 1 meter from the top and carries on 2 meters after that. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag in another box, and we'll just change this one size to 100 by 100 by 100 again. And then I'm going to drag this up over here, and let's say, well, let's scale it first. So we want it to be 2 meters tall. Okay, so we got that scaling right, so I just want to get it so it perfectly lines up with our table over here. I think one more unit. It's actually digging into it now, so 1 unit above. There we go. And then I'm going to set it's 2 meters tall. Then I'm going to set its width to 19. And I think this one I'm going to leave on 1. And we can set it on exactly 0.5 as well. And do it like that. But then we're going to have to line it up perfectly. You might want to go into like your other views. I'm just using the viewport because I kind of want to see everything. Alright, there we go. So now we got an area the size of what we want. So under our brush settings now, you'll see that there's 2 options for brush type, additive and subtractive. So if we click subtractive, it will subtract from the other brush that we created. Now please note that this option does not work with these models over here because they are static meshes and you cannot subtract from a static mesh. You can only subtract from a BSP brush. Alright, so with that said, now also note that this is still a solid piece over here. This brush is still a solid piece. So if I move this one away, that will appear again. So that needs to be there when we build the level, when we finalize everything. So these 3 items need to be as separate items throughout our entire design process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to delete these 2 walls over here. And I'm going to select all 3 of these. Also another thing to note that when you're selecting a BSP brush, if you're selecting a static mesh and you hold shift and left click, you can select another static mesh. If you're doing that with a BSP brush, you can't select if you're holding shift, you have to hold control and then you can select the other one. So okay, I don't think I'm gonna get this one right off the bat. So I think it's over here. I'm going to select it in my world outliner like so. I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm just going to drag it off. I think you drag it to about halfway actually. And spacebar, rotate by 90 degrees, and then spacebar again. And I'm just going to let that kind of like line up over there. And it's digging into that wall a little bit, so I'm just going to judge it by eye. It's 1 unit too far away, and let's see. Yeah, 1 unit. Not 2, 1. There we go. I think that should be perfect. So it's right on the corner over there. Now, this is not going to matter too much if there's like a little bit of a break in between them, because we are going to put like an outside pillar over here that will raise all the way to the top. Okay, so there we have our windows blocked out. Now note that these sizes are still exactly the same as what we created our first level layout with. So if you followed all the way from the beginning, you'll know that we have our level layout inside of Blender, as you can see over here. So if you look at the sizes, that essentially we try to keep to quite a standard uniform size. And actually, if I just select this one, let's select this one, you'll see that it sizes, let's just see. Okay, it's not currently giving me the sizes at all. Let's just try and separate it, and then we should be able to get its size. So you'll see that it is 19 on the x-axis, 0.5 on the Y and 6 on the Z axis, exactly like our Unreal setup over here. So we're going to use this as our reference. And we're not going to fool around with it too much because we just want something that's fairly similar. So we don't actually even need these. We can just use these dimensions and we should be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift C. You can see my screencast key is not enabled, so I'm just going to do that. So you can see which buttons I'm pushing. Shift C. I'm going to hit Shift A and I'm going to add a plane. I'm just going to bring up this option over here again. And then we can essentially set it to 19. We don't need to set it on the Y-axis because we actually need to go into the side view and rotate it by 90 degrees. Okay, and then I'm just going to apply rotation and scale so that the Z-axis is the same size over there. So now you see that we have something that is 19 meters wide and 2 meters tall. And if you can recall that this is exactly what this subtractive brush is. It is 19 meters wide and 2 meters tall, but at 0.5 meters on its thickness, or its wall thickness. I'm not going to stress about that too much because this area over here that we have, this is going to be our glass panel. Okay, so with that set up, I'm just going to push M with my object selected, and I'm going to move it to the first layer or an empty layer. And then if we go from there, we'll see that, okay, this is everything that we're going to work off of. I just want to actually line this up with the blocks completely because each one of these blocks is essentially a meter, and it's 19 across and it's 2 meters wide. So we can use this as a reference when we're busy building our borders and everything over here. Okay, so what I want to do is essentially I'm going to create a border that is 1 meter wide, and then one that is 2 meters wide, and then one that is 3 meters wide, so that we have different options for different scales and things that we can set around the level. As you'll probably never find a wall that is going to be like exactly the same width as another wall. This will give you a little bit more flexibility if you run into like some choking points, and you could just like, okay, this one's going to be 1 meter wide, this one's going to be 2 meters wide. So we're going to start with the first one. So let's just deselect this. Shift C again. I'm going to add let's work with planes. I'm going to go into side view, and I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. Okay, and holding G and Control, pushing G and holding Control, just going to drag it over here. Tab to go into edit mode, and I'm just going to kind of like set the size over here. So this now depends on how thick you want your this part of the border to be. I think that it should actually be half the size. So because you're going to stack them against one another, this one should be like half the size of this block. So what we could do is we could just go and drag it off like so. Yeah, that looks okay. And then I'm going to hit Control R to add a loop cut. Click and then just drag it all the way to the top. We essentially want this one also to be 5 units thick. And then we're going to add another one over here. Same thing, but this one is going to be a little bit different because we already added the loop cut. You'll see that it's not snapping to the grid correctly. So we're just going to drag it off kind of to where we want, and then hit Shift S and snap selection to grid, and then that should be fine. Okay, then I can select this whole thing over here in edit mode, hit Shift D to copy it, drag it off all the way to the side, and then I'm going to select these vertices, hit F to fill these ones, F to fill. And that's our first border, but it doesn't have any width. So selecting it from a side, we can like move it a little bit out. I think let's move it like it's dependent on the size of our the object that we want. So if we just like go back, this was 0.5, so this one needs to be 0.5 as well. So let's just quickly just extrude a little point over there, and then I'm just going to hit Control A, and I'm going to apply rotation and scale, and then we should get like a indication over here. Okay, the Y is 0.1, we want that to be 0.5. There we go. So there's our first skirting essentially done, and we can work off of the basis of this one. We could just duplicate it by pushing Shift D. Let's see, okay, I created two of them, so let's just do that. And then I don't want to scale it on any of the axes, because then it's going to change these border sizes. So I'm just going to grab it on its side and then drag it off all the way over here. So now we can see, if we zoom out a little bit, that we have one that is 1 meter wide and 2 meters tall. This one's 2 meters wide and 2 meters tall. And then lastly, as I said, we wanted a third one. And again, I'm going to grab its side and then just drag it all the way off. Remember not to scale. The reason why I say not to scale is because, let me just show you, if you scale on the x-axis and you want it to get to about 3 meters, you'll see that that size increases, and then you have to go in and fine-tune it again. So remember, don't use the scaling option. Alright, so what we're going to do next is we're just going to add like the different levels in, as you can see here. This one essentially has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 levels, and there's one in the middle. So let's use that as our basis. Let's go over here. To make this a little bit simpler, I'm going to do it on a separate mesh. So I'm just going to deselect that. I'm going to hit Shift C again, add a plane, go into the side view and rotate it by 90 degrees, grab and move it up. And then I'm going to bring it all the way over here, and I'm going to make it smaller in edit mode. So we want something that's exactly in the middle. So this one has 4 units over here and 4 units over here, and then half a unit here and half a unit there. So the middle point is pretty much over there where that line is. So let's just select all, grab it over. There we go. And now for this one, we can actually use the scaling. So I'm just going to scale it, and essentially I want it to only be 2 units of these tiny units. So scale on the x-axis, holding control as I'm scaling. There we go. And well, this one doesn't need to go all the way in, neither does this one. Okay. So now we got that, and we can move it over there. And it is not exactly the same length. If you go back to your reference, you can see it like cuts short like a little bit from the border itself. So it's not exactly the same length. Okay, that's for those ones over there. This one is slightly shorter than them. So, but it only seems like on the one side, it like cuts in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this all the way at the end, tab in edit mode, hit E, well, first select everything by hitting A, hit E to extrude, and then I think it should be somewhere along the lines of there. Alright, it does seem a little bit big. I'm not going to worry about it too much, because we first need to get it inside of Unreal before we can start worrying about the scaling or anything like that. What I mean by big is that let's just actually go into perspective mode and center this, and then you can kind of like see that I think that one should be, maybe this entire unit should actually be like half scale. But I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not going to worry about that too much now. What we want to do is just finish this up. We can always worry about the scaling later. Okay, so let's just go into front view. I'm just going to actually duplicate this and then rotate it by 90 degrees. Center it, and then in object mode scale it on the x-axis. And we actually, okay, we might have to just do and grab it in edit mode. It's not snapping quite to grid, so I'm going to move it close to it and then hit Shift S to snap the grid. Same over here. Shift S, snap the grid. Okay. And then one last thing. They're supposed to be a little bit longer than this one. So what I'm going to do is, if you look at your reference, you'll see that they're almost the same size as this, the border over there. So we're going to make this the same size as the border. Just going to like miss it a little bit. So we'll drag it like something like that. And then this one is a little bit smaller. So if we go into it, you'll see that, okay, that looks okay. Scaling still looks a little bit off, but as I said, I'm not going to worry too much about that now. I'm going to select this one. I'm going to rotate it by 30 degrees. 30 degrees, but much. Maybe rotate by 20. 20 seems a little bit better, and then I'm just going to like position it over here. And I'm just going to look at it and see what it looks like. Alright, that looks okay. And then essentially all that we need to do is hit Shift D and copy it. Alright, so I'm just going to like copy this off until I kind of like get where I want it to be. I know there's a repeat step option in Blender. I can't recall which button it is, so that might make it a little bit simpler, but this doesn't take too long, so I didn't really bother with it. And now I can actually see that my scaling is definitely off. I want everything to be kind of like half the size. But we can quickly, for simplicity's sake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, well, let's select all of these. I'm just going to join them together, maybe with the middle one as well, so that they're all like one selection when you select it. And I'm going to select the outside border and that, and I'm going to hit File, Export, FBX, and let's make a new one. We're going to call this Window Borders, and I'm going to call this Border Test, and selected objects only, geometries, edge detect, and armature. Disable the add leaf bones, click Export. And this is just going to be a test. I just honestly want to see what it looks like. So let's go into our level design tutorial, window border, and there we go. Import scaling should be fine. Okay, it's a little bit off because I didn't set it on the world center. That's something you should always remember. And now you're going to see that that kind of doesn't look right. Because it looks more like a bookshelf than anything else, where I was kind of like trying to get it to match up with like the wall thickness and everything like that. It doesn't quite work, but let's just see. Yeah, there we go. Everything else works. Its size is correct, except that that is a little bit off. So I think that we're going to skip on having the 1 meter one, or maybe not skip on it, but what we are going to do is we're just going to like scale these in a little bit because we want something that is bigger than that. That just kind of looks a little bit too tiny. So what we can quickly do is we can select this, Shift D, grab it, move it to the center of this one, and then on the side I'm just going to drag this out, and on this side drag this out, and we're just going to do another test. So essentially you just want to do a test until you can kind of like get the proper size that you want, and we're just going to replace that one. Actually think, here we go. So that looks a little bit better. I think the 2 meter one was the base that we're supposed to aim for, because that kind of like looks, the 1 meter one looks a little bit too small. We can keep it in our Blender reference just so that we can fool around with it a little bit later, but I think that we're ultimately gonna go with the one that is 2 meters in length. But now we also need to kind of like try and judge the size. If we go back to our reference, and then we can see that maybe these are 10 units stacked on one another and they look okay. They're not rotated as much. I think mine might be rotated a bit too much. I think I should have settled for something like 10 degrees. So we kind of just want to get like the size right, and once we get that right, then maybe everything should look a little bit better. So let's just jump back over here, and I'm going to select these. I don't think I can rotate them. No, I can't. I need to rotate them individually. So I'm going to select the top one. I'm going to hit P to separate by selection, and then I'm just going to like, okay, let's hide these ones. So I'm not going to use that again. I'm going to now only work off of the 2 and the 3 meter one. And actually we can actually play this by eye. So what I want to do is I first, because its origin point is completely out of whack. Where is it now? Set origin to, let's do it to center of mass. There we go, let's do something like that. I'm going to select all of these and then just delete them. And then another thing, I want to scale it on the y-axis, and we want to make it a little bit smaller. You see, it's doing it like that. It actually gave us like a kind of like a scaling that we wanted, or it looks okay. So this one as well, scale it on the y-axis. We're gonna make it a lot smaller. And something like that, I think. Does that look okay? It looks pretty good. So now it's just back to the process of we want 8 of them. So I'm just going to do that. Shift D. And then the last one. Okay, so we added the 1 extra one. But now we can quickly join them up again. Before I join everything up, I'm actually just going to hit Shift D to copy it, and I'm going to move this to an empty layer, just in case I want to come back to it. Alright, so let's try this. I'm going to export it, and let's import it and just overwrite. Alright, you can see now that instantly looks much better. It actually makes our border also look a little bit better on this side over here. We can actually scale this border to half size, but I think I want to keep it kind of where it is, because we set our wall thickness, and I think the wall that we created is a little bit thicker than the wall inside of Mirror's Edge. That's why we're getting like we're having a little bit more difficulty than what they would have. Alright, so I think I'm pretty much happy with the way that this looks at the current moment. So now the only thing is, now we need to go into Blender and we're going to repeat this process. But now I need to copy all of these. Select link, Shift D, and grab it, and I'm going to move it to the center of this one over here. I think that should be its center point. Indeed it was. But that's going to look a little bit off, because we want something that kind of like matches up with that. So we're going to have to maybe like stack this one up a little bit more. So let's just have a look. We might have to stack it up twice. So I'm going to link that one, grab it. Let's do one over there and select link for that one, grab it and put it over there. Alright, so that looks much better already, and it's starting to take shape. We can maybe actually move it in a little bit closer, grab and maybe move it in one, and grab this one and maybe move it in one. Okay, now that looks much better. Alright, so we kind of got like our sizes and our scaling right now in this video. So alright, so I wanted to keep the video short, so this one is already a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do in the next video is we're going to do some UV unwrapping. We're just going to work a little bit more on our skirting and our borders and everything that we're setting up. And then in the next video we're going to do UV unwrapping. We're going to add a texture to it and then import everything into Unreal Engine 4 and finalize it. So if you like what you saw, leave a like. If you didn't, you can leave a dislike. Leave a comment down below. Please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.